Shabbat Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. This is Barbara, and I'm serving as your host today, and also your co-host, Brother Pete, is here, and Catherine is here today. And you are joining our fellowship group. We have a nice circle of family and friends all out on the internet that are here with us present today as we're doing this recording. So I hope that you will go to our website for more information about the calendar and the Sabbath, lunarsabbathday.com. Today's topic is the Sabbath. My Sabbaths, a sign between me and them, and that's in Ezekiel 20:12. Ezekiel 20 is such a great chapter. It really talks a lot about the Sabbath. Jehovah instructed Ezekiel to make known the abominations of the fathers of Israel and why his judgment had come upon them. And that's in Ezekiel 24. I hope you'll take time to read the whole chapter. We're going to hit on some of the highlights here today. So Israel rebelled against Jehovah, Ezekiel 20:5-9.
And say unto them, Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, in the day when I chose Israel and lifted up mine hand unto the seed of the house of Jacob, and made myself known unto them in the land of Egypt, when I lifted up my hand unto them, saying, I am Yahweh your Elohim. In the day that I lifted up my hand unto them to bring them forth of the land of Egypt into a land that I had espied for them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands. Then said I unto them, Cast ye away every man the abomination of his eyes, and defile not yourselves with idols of Egypt. I am Yahweh your Elohim. But they rebelled against me, and would not hearken unto me. They did not every man cast away the abominations of their eyes, neither did they forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I said, I will pour out my fury upon them, to accomplish my anger against them in the midst of the land of Egypt. But I wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted before the heathen among whom they were, in whose sight I made myself known unto them, in bringing them forth out of the land of Egypt.
So thus says Jehovah Elohim, I raised my hand in an oath. Ezekiel 26:15-23.
Excuse me. In the day that I lifted up my hand unto them to bring them forth of the land of Egypt into the land that I had espied for them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands, yet also I lifted up my hand unto them in the wilderness, that I would not bring them into the land which I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands. I lifted up my hand unto them also in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the heathen, and disperse them through the countries.
Okay, so Jehovah chose Israel and raised his hand in an oath. Okay, what does an uplifted hand imply? I'm going to ask those here. Anyone can answer. What do you think again? He lifted his hand in an oath. And you know the obvious is we have in the court of law, but have you thought about Jehovah lifting up his hand in an oath? That is an oath that would never, ever be broken. Any comments, anybody?
This is Pete, and we also know that the hand is Yeshua himself, the Logos, the Devar. So, in a sense, he's actually raising up his own right arm, that which brought Israel out, in accordance with that oath, or with an oath that he is giving to do something. So his hand is that which actively does.
Okay, that's really great. Thank you. Well, then there's verse 5 where he says, "And say unto them, Thus saith Jehovah Elohim, in the day when I chose Israel, and lifted up my hand unto the seed of the house of Jacob, and made myself known unto them in the land of Egypt, when I lifted up my hand unto them, saying, I am Jehovah your Elohim." So Ezekiel 20:11, "And I gave them my statutes, and showed them my judgments, which if a man do, he shall even live in them." And the next verse, Ezekiel 20:12, "Moreover, I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between them and me." And that's our title for today. Catherine, would you like to read this page?
Ezekiel 20:13, "But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They walked not in my statutes, and they despised my judgments, which if a man do, he shall even live in them. And my Sabbaths they greatly polluted. Then I said, I would pour out my fury upon them in the wilderness to consume them."
Okay, and go ahead, Catherine, and read this part.
Ezekiel 20:14, verse 17. "But I wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted before the heathen, in whose sight I brought them out. Yet also I lifted up my hand unto them in the wilderness, that I would not bring them into the land which I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands, because they despised my judgments, and walked not in my statutes, but polluted my Sabbaths, for their heart went after their idols." A cross-reference, Amos 5, verse 25 to 26. "Nevertheless, mine eye spared them from destroying them, neither did I make an end of them in the wilderness."
And here is Amos 5:25 to 26. "Have you offered unto me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness 40 years, O house of Israel? But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and Chion, your images, the star of your God, which ye made to yourselves." So this is a reference from the Jewish Encyclopedia. It's likely in reference to Chion mentioned in Amos 5:26, which the Septuagint renders as Ramphon or Ramphon, and that's generally assumed to be the god Saturn, the star god. Excuse me. So you've seen these days of the week, and they're all named after planets, and Saturday is named after Saturn. And does that sound familiar? Saturn and Saturn Day. And remember, Ramphon and Chion are the star gods represented as Saturn.
Ezekiel 20:23 through 25. "I lifted up my hand unto them also in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the heathen and disperse them through the countries. Because they had not executed my judgments, but they despised my statutes and had polluted my Sabbaths, and their eyes were after their fathers' idols. Wherefore I gave them also statutes that were not good, and judgments whereby they should not live."
Well, in Ezekiel 20:25, Elohim said to the Israelites, "I gave them also statutes that were not good, and judgments whereby they should not live." That's a question. I guess this might be one of the most difficult passages in the book of Ezekiel, if not in the Old Testament. If Ezekiel is saying Jehovah gave the Israelites statutes that were not good and laws they could not live by, he would be contradicting himself if he said that, right? Nowhere else in the Old Testament is any divine statute or law described as not good. Elsewhere, Jehovah said to the Israelites, keep my decrees and laws, for the man who obeys them will live by them. Leviticus 18:5. Follow them so that you may live. Deuteronomy 4:1. It is even more surprising to find the same ideas expressed in Ezekiel 20 itself. I gave them my decrees and made known to them my laws, for the man who obeys them will live by them. Verse 11. The same idea is found in verse 13 and 21. The man who obeys them will live by them.
Most Bible versions.
Go ahead.
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead, Brother Pete. Sorry, I was pointing over there.
Most Bible versions render the first verb in Ezekiel 20:25, I gave them. That is a good translation, but there are other possibilities. For instance, we also find, quote, I even imposed on them. And that's the New English Bible, I guess. And, excuse me. And I also gave them over to statutes, end quote. That's the NIV. Those translations are based on the fact that when the Hebrew word nathan, to give, is followed by the preposition le, meaning to, it could mean to deliver someone to. In that case, the text would be saying that since the Israelites determined to follow bad laws from their neighbors, Yahweh confirmed their willing rebellion against him by handing them over to obey laws that were not good.
So, Catherine, go ahead on this reading.
Ezekiel 20, verse 26 and 27. And I polluted them in their own gifts, in that they caused to cast to the fire all that openeth the womb, that I might make them desolate to the end, that they might know that I am Yahweh. Therefore, Son of man, speak unto the house of Israel, and say unto them, Thus saith Yahweh God, Yet in this your fathers have blasphemed me, in that they have committed a trespass against me.
So, Jehovah's long-suffering, quote, but I acted for my name's sake, Ezekiel 20, verses 9, 14, 17, 22. Here is given the ground of Jehovah's gracious dealings. The people were not to flatter themselves that any goodness of their own had merited these favors, and you can see that in Numbers 14, Deuteronomy 9, Jeremiah 14. For his name's sake, Jehovah did not completely destroy the people, but merely excluded that generation from the possession of Canaan, Numbers 14. You can look these up for yourself. So for his name's sake, Jehovah restrained himself, acting instead for the sake of his name, that it should not be profaned in the eyes of the nations, in that I made myself known to them, and that is to Israel, in their sight, that is, in the presence of the Egyptians and others. He made himself known to them to bring them out from the land of Egypt. So he wouldn't destroy his people. And that's all in Ezekiel 29. Okay, so now we're going to go forward a little more about the Sabbath. Ezekiel 20, 18 through 19. But I said unto their children in the wilderness, Walk ye not in the statutes of your fathers, neither observe their judgments, nor defile yourselves with their idols. I am Jehovah your Elohim. Walk in my statutes, and keep my judgments, and do them. And here is the next verse, verse 20, Ezekiel 20:20. I've always had this memorized since I've been a Sabbath keeper my whole life. First on the Gregorian calendar and now on the Father's calendar, Ezekiel 20:20. And hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am Jehovah your Elohim. Ezekiel 20:20. When Jehovah says, I gave them my Sabbaths, what is he talking about? And what is the significance of the Sabbath? Okay, here's a question for everybody here. Just go ahead and start talking. We have no way of knowing if we talk on top of another. Just keep talking. And yeah, everyone here can answer this. When he says he gave them his Sabbath, what's he talking about? And what is the significance of the Sabbath? We'd like to hear from some of you.
Well, Sabbath, that would be something that would be specific of Yah, because he created that as a day of rest for his children. And that's one thing that sets us apart from everyone else.
Right, Catherine, thank you. Anybody else? What is he talking about when he said, I gave them my Sabbaths?
This is Anthony.
I'm hearing you, Anthony.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Hallelujah.
Oh, praise the Lord. I'm surprised. Here's one observation on the Sabbath. Boy, my voice is echoing right into my own speakers. Anyway, in Exodus 20, I counted the number of words in the Ten Commandments, and there are 297 words in the King James Bible. Let's see, how is it? The middle 5 words in Exodus 20 is these 5 words. Seventh day is the Sabbath. Those are the middle 5 words of the entire Ten Commandments.
Oh.
So this is just one of many evidences that God, in God's kingdom, he speaks to us his plans, his promises, his mind, by way of words, by way of numbers. That's the way his works. So that's just one example. I have a lot of other things. I'm glad I got.
Well, we're glad to hear your voice, Brother Anthony. Thank you. We're glad to hear your voice, and that's really awesome. And the entire Ten Commandments, Sabbath day is a Sabbath. Those are the center words. I just love that. Thank you for adding that in today.
All right. Can you hear
me? Yes, go ahead.
This is Verlin.
Good, Verlin.
You asked a question. You said, what does it mean when it says, I gave them my Sabbaths with the S? And
right.
I believe that means not only the 7th day Sabbath, but, correct me if I'm wrong, but when he says Sabbath with the S, I'm thinking he's talking about the feast days as well. The day of Atonement, the memorials, the blowing of the trumpets, the Sukkot, Pentecost, or the Feast of Weeks, unleavened bread, first and the 7th day. So I think that because it has the S behind it, I think he's talking about not only the weekly Sabbath, but every other Sabbath that he gave us, the annual Sabbaths. But like I said, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, I agree, Brother Verlin. It's good to hear your voice today. Yes, that I believe he's talking about all the Sabbaths. We know that Sabbath is the first feast day listed, and he's talking about all the feasts and the Sabbaths and the 7th day Sabbath. Any other comments?
Yes,
go right ahead. Appa from Alaska. Brother Appa, nice to hear you.
Nice to hear you too. Happy Sabbath, everybody. Yeah, so I believe that the Sabbaths were, when he says, I gave them my Sabbath, if you look at general Christendom, they believe that the Ten Commandments were given at Sinai, or when the Ten Commandments were given to Israel. And if he said, I give them my Sabbath, he talks about the pre-existence of that. And so right now there's a lot of people that believe that the fourth commandment wasn't applicable until that specific point in time, and that shows when he says that it pre-existed that, and it goes along with when the Lord said that my commandments, or the commandments stood fast, or the commandments stood fast, meaning that they've been around a lot longer than what a lot of people are led to believe. So that was my take. That's always what I think about when he says that I gave them my Sabbath. So how is he supposed to give them their Sabbath if he just created them at that point? So, and I know a lot of people here probably believed in the fourth commandment, but there's a lot of people that don't believe in the fact that they that God's laws are, go way back to the beginning. So, but that's my take on it.
Well, thank you, Brother Appa, that pointing out that, they were pre-existing from creation, right? So, anybody else have a comment?
This is Pete, and I wanted to comment both Vernon and Appa. Further, is one of the Sabbaths we're forgetting about is the last Sabbath, I'll call it. And I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of the millennial days or the millennial week, which is the perspective that the creation, this aeon in which we live, will exist for 7,000 years, a day long for each of the days of creation. And obviously we're at the end of the 6th day right now, and the advent of the 7th day, which is the day of the Lord, not just a single 24-hour day, but a 1,000-year reign of Christ on the earth. So when he gave us his Sabbaths, he says that there's those that, I forget how it's actually worded, I'll have to paraphrase, but those that have not walked with him will not enter his rest. And that rest, of course, is the Sabbath to come. So there are also, on top of that, my wife was reminding me, there are sabbatical years as well. And I want to add one more thing to the concept of Sabbath is we keep looking at the Sabbath, but that implies that implicit in that is that he is promising us provision in the 6th day, in the 6 days, that we can rest on the 7th. So there's actually a promise in the Sabbath of provision enough that we don't have to work on the Sabbath to make it.
Thank you, Brother Pete, and thank you, everyone, for reminding us the Sabbath's in the center of the Ten Commandments, and as the Sabbath's our feast and pre-existing, and the millennial Sabbath, and that our provisions right now, we're in the 6th day, going in the 7th day soon, and we're provided for the double portion of manna. So thank you, each one, and we're going to go forward now. Well, here is a question for you. Maybe you just now found our channel, and you're wondering about the calendar. Well, I have some questions for you. When Jehovah gave them their Sabbaths and the 7th day Sabbath, did he give them a 7th day Sabbath on a Roman Republic calendar, 738 BC? Did he give them a 7th day Sabbath on a Roman Julian calendar, 45 BC? Did he give them the calendar that the Roman Emperor Constantine changed in 321 AD? Did he give them a seventh-day Sabbath on a Roman Gregorian calendar that is in use today and was proclaimed in 1582 AD by Pope Gregory XIII as a reform of the Julian calendar? Was it any of those calendars? And, of course, the answer is none of the above. He gave them the Sabbath of creation. His calendar is in the heavens. Here's another question for our family that's here today, gathered about here on the internet. How were the Sabbaths a sign to Israel? So go ahead, anybody that would like to answer that. Yes, go ahead, I hear you.
This is Verlin, Brother Verlin. I kind of want to go back to the 4 questions that you had previously.
Okay, sure. Right here, we go back to that page.
Now, when you read those 4 questions, each one of them is absolutely not. But when I go back through my studying, and when I first started studying about the calendars, I first started studying the Fast-I calendar, which was an 8-day calendar. So all through the scriptures.
We're breaking up a little. I hope it's not my turn.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, I think it's on my end. Go ahead, Brother Verlin. Yes, there was a Fast-Day one calendar before that even.
Okay, so my point is that was an 8-day calendar. So all through the scripture, the Most High talks about a seventh day Sabbath. So when you can't, well, a person can't really, you can't keep a 7th day Sabbath on an 8-day a week calendar, So I mean, it's obvious and evident to me that first starting off with the Fast-I calendar is just Israel had to keep their own Sabbath on their own calendar, while Rome kept that 8-day a week calendar. And I just wanted to, always when I'm sharing this with other believers, I always like to take them back in history and show them that, just to let them know that from the very beginning, something. Just bear with me. From the very beginning, Israel, they had to have their own calendar. When you start talking about how Rome made them subservient to them. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think the key word with the Sabbath, when it would say that it's a sign between me and thee, was definitely a distinction. And the reason why I say that is because if you look through the Old Testament and the Torah, it embedded in there is obviously the key to understanding the Sabbath. So in a way, it's showing our ability to pay attention to what the Lord is saying, and then discover how His clock works. And it's not all located in one place. It's spread throughout the Torah and even the New Testament. So it's a distinction between people that are listening and people that are not listening, and also people that are following wrong principles and right principles in the calendar. And that's the part of running the to and fro part, building this foundation of this calendar and how it relates to His plan of salvation. So for me, I just saw that as a sign. But back in the old days, like you said, people would be killed, and there was actually a forced element that was into it, and we know that's not what Yahweh wants in terms of worshiping your obedience through your loving heart. And so I just believe that really when they're talking about a sign, it's obviously that for that commandment, that's as part of His mark of approval. And it's when He says that's a sign between me, He's emphasizing the importance of that commandment in worship. Albeit, like the other brother said, it's not the end-all, be-all, because we're supposed to obey all his commandments. But it definitely brings more importance to the commandment, relevant to the other commandments.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
it sets us apart. It sets us apart because
Sets us apart, yes.
it sets us apart because then we're on a different calendar. So I wonder what the Hebrew meaning for sign is.
That's a good question.
Zion. Doesn't Zion mean sign? I'm not sure.
I have a comment also.
Yes, please. Go ahead. And this is?
Gabriel.
Gabriel. Yes, Gabriel. Thank you.
So most of the time when we talk about the Sabbath day or when we share about the Sabbath, we emphasize to keep it. It's very important to keep it.
Uh-huh.
Well, we need to look also of where that particular Sabbath is coming from, under what signature it's coming, and who initiated that Sabbath. That's why we have the Bible verse that says, I give them. Who is I? The Creator. I institute the Sabbath. So, in other words, he's telling us, be sure that the Sabbath that you are keeping, the Sabbath that you observe, it's coming from me. And that's the issue in Christianity and throughout the world. People forget to ask, where is their Sabbath coming? Because if you talk to people that worship Sunday, if you ask them, they are clueless. Saturday keepers, they said, well, it's coming from the creation. But there's no proof for that.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I believe, however, there is proof too that in some of the Jewish encyclopedias that they have record of putting their calendar on a calculated cycle, and that they were compelled to do so because of the persecution of Constantine's son. And I think that's historical record, so that kind of exposes that as well. That the Jews, the Pharisees and whatnot, they changed the calendar, which people that
understand in the New Testament, where Paul is talking about law and done away and all that. Pardon me, I'm jumping in the middle without having all my ducks in a row. But the point is I see that Paul is often speaking, there's a difference in the way the Greek is written, and one is with what they call the definitive article, and one is without the definitive article. In one case, it's ha, meaning the, and nomos, generally translated law. So where he says the law, ha nomos, I find that he's talking about Torah there. When he says nomos without the definitive article, I find that he's talking about the rules, the developed rules of the Jews. And so, what was I going to say about that is, yes, the very point here is Paul is saying we no longer need what I'll call house rules, because we are living through the Holy Spirit in us to keep Torah. We don't need somebody giving us little laws out of Torah. We can read the Torah for ourselves and walk it in accord with the way the Spirit leads us in Torah. Anyway, that's a thought. So going back there is, I look at that passage, Ezekiel 20 and 25, where it says, and whether he gave them or whether he allowed them to be given over to the rule system of the Jews, which they believed they were actually going to be saved by keeping the rules. I find that's the problem, is no, that's not the case. It is walking in the Spirit, and the evidence of that is being able to live Torah and walk the commandments, the principles and rule whatever you call them, of Torah. So Barb apparently has her presentation back up, and I think we're on a question here. How were the Sabbaths assigned to Israel? But I think our time, if anybody has any other words here, I think we'll just wrap up here. And anybody have any other burning things, things that they would really like to state? Okay, well, I guess we will sign off. I don't know if Barb's been able to get her audio back in. I guess not, but we do see the presentation up.